So hello and welcome everybody. It's great to see a nice crew coming to the in-person classes and people on Zoom as well. Welcome to everyone. So today I'm just waving us hi. This is the topic I'm covering today came as a result of a question in the last session. And like all profound questions, they get one reflecting on, how does this apply in one's life? How does decisions get made? And we've all heard in meditation circles, we often hear the things like, thoughts are not facts, and you are not your thoughts. So if thoughts are not facts, how do you make a decision? Because we do use the mind in making decisions. So I really want to look at how thoughts can inform our decisions, and kind of looking at the different kinds of, I'll call them intelligences that we have. And think of a scientist that's got all the data. They're analyzing data, just spending days and days analyzing this data, and they're not coming to a conclusion. We've maybe all been here in some way in our jobs or in our lives, and they just kind of throw up their arms and go, okay, I'm not getting anywhere. After 10 cups of coffee, I'm still not getting anywhere. I'm just going to go for a walk, and boom, the conclusion or the answer, the decision just arises, and it arises into an empty space. In fact, they've stopped analyzing the data, and they're just allowing something to flow in. Or think of an artist, somebody who's painted a famous painting. Is beloved by many, many people. Inevitably, if you ask that artist where they got the idea for the painting, you try it yourself. If you come across an artist that you love, they'll say, I don't know. In fact, the more they don't know, the more paintings they produce, it seems, because there's something that just flows out. So this is what I want to touch into. How can we bring that into the way that we make decisions in our lives? So this talk is completely based on my own personal experience. So if it's not resonating with you, then it's because I have a different experience with it. But I think the scientist and the artist example, I had a discussion with my wife, and I often bounce off when we're walking. I bounce off the ideas, and she goes, I don't know. I don't know what you mean by collective consciousness and deeper dimension. And you're like, what do you? So then she forces me to get real, right? Bring it down to exactly what it looks like. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. And I think many of us don't draw on this other aspect in our decision making. And I'll describe what I mean by this other aspect. And part of it is being able to distinguish between what I'm going to call egoic thoughts, that busy mind that comprises most of what our mind produces, and what I'll call intuition, or thoughts coming from a deeper dimension or collective consciousness. So we have to be able to distinguish the two, right, before we can kind of utilize the other one. So I see us as having all kinds of different intelligences. We have egoic intelligence, which is an intelligence. It's mostly focused on our survival. It's a very anxious kind of intelligence, produces a lot of fear and anxiety, struggle, always wanting things to be just right, but it is a necessary intelligence. It keeps us from walking out in front of cars, for example, putting our hand on hot stoves. It's got that kind of survival knowledge. There's conceptual intelligence. So that's the data that I was referring to with the scientists. We use concepts, and this mind is a great tool for categorizing and conceptualizing and producing typologies and so on. We have emotional intelligence. There's been lots of work done on EQ being important, not just IQ, but our emotional intelligence. There's a gut feeling intelligence. It's actually a biological phenomenon. It's where our prefrontal cortex is connected to our basal ganglia. If there's any physicians out there, I'm sorry if I got some of the words wrong, but it's connecting something deeper in our body, the basal ganglia, into our minds. And I'm going to call the last one intuition, or collective consciousness intelligence. It's our collective intelligence. So we need all of these to survive and to make decisions. So we tend to rely on our egoic intelligence to make decisions with a sprinkling of conceptual. And we really do rely on our brains producing all these thoughts. So we're almost addicted to the process of egoic mind producing thoughts. We just kind of always kind of following them and really believing them. And so we're making a lot of our decisions on them, and most of them are not helpful, not useful in making decisions. They make, as I say, keep you from walking out in front of cars and so on, but as a deeper intelligence, they're just really not that helpful in making decisions. And I'll give you some examples at the end. And they also create our sense of a limited self. It's finite and limited, not connected to the whole. So they're very self-centered. So that if we only utilize our egoic thoughts, we're making decisions that are very self-oriented and not connected with the whole. And you see this in the world, right? You see that how this decision-making creates chaos, really, in the world, and conflict, division in the world. It's kind of based on the belief of the egoic mind that, if I just struggle with reality, eventually things will be all right. I'll be able to fix it and get things just right. Does that sound like the egoic mind? I just got to fix this and this and this, and then I'll be happy. Things will work out. And of course, you fix that and that and that, and kind of right back. When we started, the ego's just got another thing to fix. It has to struggle to remain center stage, so it'll always come up with something to struggle with. It's the nature of the egoic mind to struggle. So you cannot make skillful decisions using the egoic mind with a sprinkle of conceptual mind, and that tends to be what we do. So how do you make decisions? That's what we kind of painted a picture of how not to make decisions. So how do we make them? We use our other intelligences. We really use our other intelligences. We don't rely on egoic intelligence. And I found with people when they get when they've touched into the illusory nature of the egoic self, when they've seen that it's not who they truly are, they'll utilize those kind of egoic thoughts much less in their decision making. But what they tend to then turn to is a lot of conceptual thoughts. So I've met longtime meditators who are just like, everything's conceptualizing everything. Like the Buddhist teachings are just typologies of all the different teachings, and so they're really enthralled with the conceptual aspect. And I'll say this, that the conceptual intelligence is useful, but it'll only get us so far. We should not be totally reliant on it for our decisions. So we take in all the data, like the scientist, of the information. And that gives us some basis for our decisions. And what I would invite you to call upon once you've got all this data is your deeper intelligence, your deeper consciousness, or the collective consciousness, the consciousness that's not limited or finite. So take I have to draw little black circles on this, but say collective consciousness is this piece of paper. This represents all the collective, the one. When you hear the word the one, this is the piece of paper is the one. And if there were little black circles on that, that's each of us as manifesting from collective consciousness. So the little black circles there, and it's a black line, and that little black circle sees itself as just that circle. Isn't really aware of the rest of the white paper. Might be aware of the other black circles, or would be aware of the other black circles, and it would see itself as a separate black circle, the other black circles as a separate black circle, and finite and limited. You're limited to what's in that black circle. Now picture, instead of a solid black line, picture a dotted line. So it's more permeable. So you're allowing collective consciousness to flow into your circle and flow out. This is where you can tune into and bring online, I guess is one way to put it, access to the intelligence that comes from the collective consciousness. So it can be thought of as a non-judgmental, curious, curiosity-based intelligence. Sometimes it's called intuition. In Christianity, sometimes it's referred to as the still small voice. In the scriptures, in Elijah, there's a reference to listening to the still small voice. So there's all these different descriptors out there in different spiritual traditions, but they're referring to the same thing, this connection with God, or connection with the absolute, or connection with collective consciousness. However, whatever works for you in terms of thinking about it. And when this is active, everything's okay. And so that's where the acceptance part comes in. One way to tell collective consciousness from egoic collective consciousness-based thoughts from egoic thoughts is collective consciousness-based thoughts are always accepting of what is. There's never an argument with the present moment. Egoic intelligence is always arguing with the present moment. It's, by definition, it struggles with what is. It struggles with the present moment. So that's a real easy kind of way to tell. It sometimes comes off as a light bulb moment. I actually did a search in Google for light bulb idea. There's tons of photographs, and I click the image, tons of photographs of this notion of a light bulb going off in terms of a decision or an idea. So it has that feel of just, in the phrase, I also Googled the coming out of the blue. What does that mean, right? The decision just came out of the blue. It's a part of the brain. Some think there's a deeper dimension actually in the brain that's blue colored when you do scans. It's coming out of the blue. There's lots of different things online about what that phrase means. I really kind of see it as a descriptor. So knowing, the key here is knowing egoic, being able to tell the difference between egoic thoughts and this deeper dimension, the thoughts that are coming from this deeper dimension. That's really what I found. I spent several years just noticing the difference between the arising of egoic thoughts and then the arising of thoughts that were coming from the whole. And the thoughts coming from the whole will come into, will bubble, or tend to be more likely to bubble up into a quiet mind. So if you're, if your mind is like on supercharged doing mode, which sometimes that's what our days feel like, right? We're like on a treadmill and the mind's just go, 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 go. Then it's very difficult to touch into this deeper dimension. This intelligence bubbles into, it flows into a quiet mind, the space of a quiet mind. Just naturally flows in. You don't have to go looking for it. You don't have to sit there and go, okay, there's the egoic thoughts. So where's that deeper dimension? You don't have to search for it. It just appears into the space of a quiet mind. So don't go look, don't go kind of searching for it. That's just more egoic struggle with what is, right? Egoic mind going, oh, I got to find this deeper dimension. I got to look, and it's just more struggle. So it's kind of it's really a relaxing. It's soft, non-argumentative. Has a flavor of curiosity. As I said, the still small voice, a quiet whisper. And often we don't hear the voice because we're so noisy. The quiet voice can't compete with the louder egoic thoughts that occupy our attention throughout the day. It just can't. We can't compete with that noise because it's so soft and so quiet. So that's why it flows into this the still space of awareness. And it's not for or against anything. It's just looking, seeing with curiosity and acceptance. It's not something you need to practice. I mean, you can practice the way we just practiced, where we're settling the mind without trying to settle the mind, by just watching thoughts. Because you can't stop thoughts. So if you say, okay, I need a quiet mind in order for this to flow in. So how do I quiet the mind? Can't, in a direct sense, because if you sit and try and stop thoughts, they'll just get worse. So Carl Jung had said, what you resist persists. To resist just gets worse, actually. It exacerbates. So you can't do that. So the practice in mindfulness meditation and insight meditation is to just watch the thoughts. Be okay with it. Non-judgmental awareness of the rising of thoughts. There they go, there they go. Sometimes they're like clouds floating by every once in a while. Sometimes it's like a fireworks display. In fact, that's the image I use if I can't sleep at night. I sit and I just go, this is freaking amazing. This is like a fire spot. All I want to do is go to sleep. This discussion with my 95-year-old dad. So I didn't sleep last night. I go, what was going on? So my mind had just decided it was going to think about everything and nonsense. It was just nonsense. And so I told him to watch it like fireworks. And actually, next time I see him, ask him how this, just watching the thoughts as fireworks went for him, because he's not really a meditator, but just to bring that in as a way to practice with super busy mind. So we're just watching. And when we watch the thoughts and we're just okay with them, they tend to settle on their own. Just kind of settle. If we stop shaking the jar of muddy water, it just settles down to the bottom, and pretty soon you can see through the clear water. It's just this allowing the mind to settle. And then in that space can flow our collective conscious intelligence. So let's, I'll give you an example. Changing jobs, often a big, changing relationships. These are the big decisions, right? Changing jobs. So the egoic mind will produce all kinds of unhelpful thoughts about this person or that person not being very nice, or this, just kind of all this arguing with what's at each job. You'll notice that it's an argument with what is. So those thoughts aren't very helpful. It'll argue with what is. And if you listen to this exclusively to this thought stream, you'll be very indecisive, because there's going to be the egoic mind will argue with both jobs. What is in both jobs. So you just go, oh, that doesn't look good. No, that doesn't. So you'll tend to be very indecisive, because it'll be a negative, argumentative narrative about both jobs that you're kind of stuck with. Then how do you make a decision based on that? So then you can go to, okay, I'm growing conceptual intelligence. Good idea. Forget about all that unhelpful. It's actually useless information for decision making. They'll bring in conceptual, look at some of the data, how much do they pay, and all the manager, how long they've been a manager, just all the kind of information and data that's there. It's necessary, but the decision will come from a deeper dimension. You may find in those moments when you're really indecisive, that when you just kind of go, oh, I gotta stop thinking about this. I'm not sleeping at night because I'm worrying about this, and I just gotta stop thinking. And in that space of not thinking about it anymore, often a decision can flow into that space. So allow that space earlier in the process, I guess, is what I'm inviting you to do. Allow it. So what I find, what I'll call the yes/no decision, often comes from the deeper collective consciousness. And we ignore that voice at our peril. So the purpose of the deeper collective consciousness, or the deeper dimension, is to bring the qualities of collective consciousness to manifest as us in the world. That's why there's that connection with it, because that's all collective consciousness is doing, is manifesting as us in the world. And so then it can be a force of love and peace in the world, because that's the essential nature of collective consciousness. So it's innate within us. It's not something we need to create or conjure up through all kinds of meditation techniques or other whatever methods you might dream up to. It's innate within us all. So that's how I make decisions now. It's the only way. And as you practice this way in making decisions, you'll find that egoic thoughts have no draw at all in terms of informing your decisions. It just seems absurd to rely in any way on that intelligence for important decisions. Again, I'll rely on it for survival type decisions. Not the big important decisions in life that we make. There's a book called Blink. Has anybody heard of that? Is it Malcolm Caldwell? Is that the author? Did I get that right? Yeah, sort of right.
Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell. That's
Gladwell.
it. Thank you. Yeah, gotcha. So I remember stories, but not names. So also, there's a story in that book. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's not that book. If people remember the book, I think it's from that book where there's some card game they play, and it's kind of a gambling game, and they turn over green or blue and red cards, and if you turn over one cards from one deck, that you lose money, and if you turn over cards from the other color, you win money, but you don't know the rules of the game. You just keep winning money. And what they're doing is they're trying to figure out how fast people figure out the game, right? And while you're playing the game, you've got things, lie detector stuff on your fingers and whatever. It measures stress. And so they play this game, and they notice that after about halfway through, the body is reacting. So if you reach for the losing card, the stress goes up. The mind's totally oblivious. The body's going, no, not that card. The mind's just going, oh, I got to figure this game out. I got to figure this out. The body already knows the game. It's not being listened to. And then so that's about halfway. About 3/4 of the way, that participants report having a gut feeling that card's not a good card. I don't know why, but I just got this gut feeling that there's something that this card might not be the way to go. And then at some point, people figure it out conceptually that how the game's actually working. But there's these other intelligences that are available that are being ignored. So you can also bring, and I'm not going to go into all that because there's also gut feeling and tuning into the body that we can also bring to bear into our decision as well. But I'll leave all that to another talk. I really wanted to concentrate on how to distinguish between egoic thoughts and collective consciousness thoughts. But there's a lot more to this that you can bring into decision making. I did some work with managers at Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and they were interested in using in this kind of decision making. The course is kind of based on emotional intelligence, and that, increasing the manager's EQ, not just IQ. But I brought in all this other stuff. I had them meditating in their suits. It was kind of fun. All the upper managers at CMHC, but so they came for 10 weeks of this and found that it did give them access to other intelligences that they were really ignoring in their decision making. So I'll just open it up for any questions or comments. Yes. Oh,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, you go ahead.
go ahead.
Always talking.
I have a clarification question. I'm just wondering, how do you distinguish collective consciousness from just the influences of the socio-cultural context in making our decisions? Because I guess, yeah, I'm just struggling to understand how collective consciousness would be different from our socio-cultural norms, and having that just kind of internalized and making the decision from those norms.
Yeah, they're very different. The questions about how the role of socio-cultural norms and influences that play into our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We're so conditioned, in fact, I'd say programmed by societal expectations. We're programmed. So in a way, we're stepping beyond our programming. Because we're programmed to want stuff, right, to keep the economy going. Right now, they're asking us not to want stuff because there's inflation. So everybody's got to put a little bit of a damper on their wanting. As soon as we get inflation under control, we're going to ramp up the wanting again. So we're programmed to want, to desire material things. So we have all these kinds of programming. We're programmed to put a lot of emphasis on what other people think of us, the social acceptance, which is kind of an egoic drive in a way. It's kind of a natural drive at the egoic level, but we're also then programmed. It's kind of emphasized through our societal programming. So of course, all this comes into our decision making. A lot of it shows up as egoic thoughts, because one thing we're not programmed in this society is to let go of that and look at the deeper dimension. The deep collective consciousness doesn't really care about material possessions all that much. It doesn't attach to them. You can enjoy them from the perspective of collective consciousness, but it's not a motivating desire. So we're kind of stepping out of that exactly. We're stepping out of that programming in many ways in making our decisions. Now, of course, you can then become kind of counterculture a bit, right? In fact, we're a bit counterculture, just doing what we're doing here. Right? Culture would be saying we should be at a movie or sitting in a bar having a beer or a wine or whatever. Culture would, we're supposed to work, and then what's the saying? You work hard and play hard. What's play hard mean? A lot of people use drinking. So there's all those cultural pressures, and yeah, we're kind of going against the flow in this practice. The flow of egoic consciousness, right? We're actually swimming against the current in many ways, going against that. So it doesn't play a role. It doesn't play a role. Somebody on Zoom have a question? Is that
It's me as usual. It's me. Hi, Stephen. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that talk, Stephen. You know that touched on my question about decision making personally. So I guess I wanted to less a question and more just light bulb that went off when you were talking about distinguishing. So I was thinking about how it can be perhaps tricky with a sneaky ego to distinguish between our egoic thoughts and intelligence and our collective consciousness. The ego wants to disguise itself as you're doing best for the world. That's the thing that comes up for me a lot. Well, you're being considerate, you're helping everyone, so make your decisions based on that. Otherwise, and then I guess this is where you were saying the light bulb moment for me was when you talked about the self-centered thoughts. So whenever it gets to self, so for me it would be I am being selfish. What will people say about me? Whatever. So that was just kind of a big realization for me. And I still think, to be honest with you, I need to process this because I think I still have a hard time distinguishing between the egoic, decision-making process and collective consciousness, because I think that I am doing things for the collective sometimes, and then I struggle with it. But so maybe for me, it's just sitting with it for a minute in my practice and just watching it and doing it that way. Also, you had put intuition and collective consciousness kind of together, but I'm curious, and I think I heard this one time, is intuition, can it not be mistaken, or can intuition not sometimes come from conditioning, past traumas, et cetera, and so we think that it's intuition, but it's actually just a result of all the other things that have built up in our lives. I guess what I'm trying to ask, there's a question in here. Are you equating intuition with collective consciousness in that intelligence, or those are different things, right? Oh, that was a lot. I'm so sorry.
Well, that's good. It's a good question. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they're just words. So I actually, Rupert Spira actually uses the word intuition to describe collective consciousness. So he doesn't define it strictly, but I mean, so I wouldn't get, if you have a different definition of intuition, then let it go as being equivalent, because intuition can have all kinds of different meanings for people. So stick with the word collective consciousness. And you pointed out how difficult it is because the egoic mind is tricky, which I think you called it a trickster. And that's a really good description. It's a shapeshifter even. So take doing good works in the world. Well, the egoic mind can do all kinds of things. It's not, maybe it's not for the good it does in the world. Maybe it's still for the ego to look good to the world, to other people. So you have to look at, well, is there a self-centered basis for these thoughts, or is it more about the deeper dimension of love? Even our spiritual practice can be, what's the word, taken over by the ego. Thoughts like, if I do this practice long enough, I'll be enlightened, then everybody will like me. I'll be more compassionate, then everybody will like me. I'll be calm, and then I won't worry. So the spiritual, the the aspiration to know our true nature can get taken over by, so that's another word I'm looking for, can be taken over by the egoic self. So we really have to be careful, right? We really have to be watchful for this, the trickster nature of self. But so look for what you said, is there self? Is it self-centered? And look for the softness. That's a real key one for me. Is it kind of a whisper? If it's a whisper, it's kind of, yeah, did you about this, just kind of go, oh yeah, that's it. So it's unmistakable in that soft voice, and you'll find it. You'll realize that, oh wow, my mind was completely still at that moment when that whisper came in. So we need the space for the still small voice to come in the quiet, in a way. Quiet. So if the mind's always loud and noisy, even if that voice is whispering, it's just drowned out by the much louder thoughts that we live in. So hopefully that's helpful. The quietness, and just we always have to be aware of ego, the shape-shifting trickster. It's just always kind of, bringing in, oh yes, I love this. Oh, spiritual stuff. Yeah, we can do that. That's a great. That'll add to me. I can add to me with the spiritual stuff. In fact, the whole awakening trajectory is a bait and switch for the egoic self, because the egoic self gets baited into it, thinking, "Oh yeah, I can be better," and then it gets so far down the road, and it goes, "Wait a minute, there's nothing in this for me." That's the ego. This is the end of me. Why did I go down this road? What was I thinking? And that's where the fear comes in from the ego. The ego starts to go, holy crap, this is not what I signed up for. This is the transcendence of the no self means no egoic self, right? It's the end of, it's not like something actually dies. It's the end of believing that these processes are who I am. These processes they'll continue, but it's the end of believing that this is who I am. So yeah, so the egos, we've covered this in past sessions, but it can't be emphasized enough that we really have to be watchful of this aspect of the egoic mind, the processes of the egoic mind. Yeah, thank you for that question.
That really sparked something for me, because I've had anxiety, and sometimes what feels like a gut feeling is actually the ego. Like it'll physically manifest and I'll think like, oh, this is some deep intuition. But you just mentioned the softness. I think that's really important, because usually the thoughts that are ego thoughts or that are manifesting when my anxiety is really bad are like, it's like a bully. It's like it won't go away. And it's not a softness. So that was a really helpful insight. So I just thought I would share that spoke to me.
Actually, really, what resonates with me as a descriptor is the Christian Bible descriptor of still small voice. It just seems to capture the essence of it more so for me than collective consciousness. It's words that are, because it's small, still. The quiet voice is another, a gentle whisper. I think Christians also use that. It's God talks through a gentle whisper. And people that talk about, God speaking to them in that way aren't talking about, like communicating with, it's like when Mother Teresa said, when you pray, what do you say? Have you all heard this story? When you pray, what do you say? And Mother Teresa said, I don't say anything, I just listen. And then the interviewer said, well, what does God say? And she said, oh, if you don't understand that answer, I don't think I can explain to you in an interview what it means. So there, she said something along those lines. So, but I don't, I listen. So she's opening to, this deeper dimension, whatever we want to call it, is how I interpreted what she said.
Wanted to share that my beautifully gifted ego knows how to replicate the soft whisper.
Did you guys hear that on Zoom? Her very gifted ego knows how to duplicate the soft whisper.
Yeah, it's really good.
That's good.
Because I picked up on this, because I have received soft whispers and they felt miraculous and calm and true. And then now sometimes it comes in, "We should do this." But what I also noticed was other elements I felt is no agenda, no defensiveness. There's no rational explanation offered. Like, other ego will usually want to be compelling, which has that flavor of defensiveness. But the soft whisper has nothing to prove. It's just, but I do struggle with sensing and delineating. And also in my experience, I've noticed in between my ego and the place of quiet and collective consciousness, I've experienced other influences that are external to me, but also not non-dual or collective. And I later learned it was the intent of someone else. So I guess I'm just very sensitive and it comes in and it feels like, oh, it's not me. It must be something higher, greater. And then I learned, oh, no, it was actually, I just absorbed someone else's intention. So I don't know if you have any experience or insights to share into that, but certainly like learning to feel through the different sources, pretty ambiguous for me.
Yeah, so the egoic mind being such a shapeshifter that it can replicate the still small voice. I've had that experience on retreat. So, you go on a multi-week retreat, of course, the mind, thinking back in time, the mind got really still and then started, in the stillness started planning, opening a retreat center and, designing it and everything else. And I realized that was just the egoic mind entertaining itself in the stillness as opposed to it being and there was, very much a self-centered into it. So it's that self-centered nature can be very, that you want to brought up in terms of delineating. For absorbing other people's intentions, I wouldn't say that I'm intuitive at that level where I can just feel draw the energy from another person. I'm simply accessing what's more collective. And if people are inserting egoic drives somehow into the mind stream of the collective, then I don't know, maybe it can be picked up. I just haven't had that experience myself. Yeah, but I know of people that do, more attuned at the individual way, energy levels, right? So I guess that's what we're very attuned to, the energy levels that individuals are giving. Whereas I'm I've talked to people that have that experience, whereas I'm more, I connect at a much more general level. It doesn't feel like there's any individual's agenda within, within that. Yeah, the closest I could probably say I've come doing some of the yoga practices that open up different chakras. I've felt some direct individual communication in that manner. I won't go into details, but that's about the closest I would say I came. So if you're doing a lot of chakra opening yoga practices, you can really you can open the heart chakra, and you can feel love from the different people in the room. Like you can actually feel the energy coming into that. And we'd spend whole days just doing scents, the smells, the sounds, the asanas, the food, like everything would be directed at opening a particular chakra. And then we talked about what happened. We just went through all of them one by one, and quite amazing. That there is that energy that we can then connect into with other people in that way. That's be the closest I've come to that kind of communication in that way. How that influences your decisions, I'm not sure, but you'd have to be aware if you have that direct connection all the time, that there's these other influences that might come into your decisions. And to be aware of it. That'd be fun, doing a retreat where we open all the chakras one by one. I did that with Anadea and Judith. So big on that kind of practice. Yeah.
Something to add, I think add to your comment, because I've had that experience before where I sense like an energy from people, and it's true, like, so there is actually this kind of some sort of negative energy that I'm picking up on. But what I found has happened is my ego will take that, turn it into this huge story. When really, and then I see that happening, and then I'm like, whoa, now there's just the energy, and it's not a story anymore. It just is a part of it just becomes a part of consciousness, and regardless, there's no positive energy, there's really no negative energy. It's just energy. It's just consciousness. So any sense that something is negative or positive is simply the ego making the story about it. I mean, that's the power of the Vedana teaching in the pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. When you're looking at feelings, when you're looking at your stream of consciousness and mindfulness practice, and then you're labeling things. That's the ego is doing that because really there's no consciousness. It's just consciousness. It doesn't play favorites. Yeah, this is an excellent talk. Thanks so much. The one way I've been kind of having this consciousness, and definitely an experience of like there's no, there's that's how I kind of think of it, conceptualize it, and and thoughts do come out, but there's nothing attached to the thoughts. There's no concepts. There's no like tension at all felt. It's just just there, and there's no story attached to it. And, anyways, I've been writing like a lot of poetry. I mean, just following the natural way. Like you mentioned the river. You know, I feel like the consciousness is like such a powerful, it's like the most powerful river that has an infinite amount of force. And so we have, you know, we're talking about people following societal norms. You know, both of these people are traveling down the river at the same speed. But if you're in that stream of you know, that whatever you want to call it, like the silent whisper, you're just there, you're just like floating along, you're no resistance. This guy's the person next to you that's really caught up in the societal norms and the egoic mind is using all their effort to try to go against the current, but they're still traveling at the same speed as you, so they're not making any progress. So, you know, I just wish, you know, you could say, oh, just like, you know, just we're all going the same place. Just can you can just go. We're all the same thing. Anyways, I wanted to read one of the poems, if that's okay. This one's called it's called "Wish of the Dust." One single blade of grass, even one lonely speck of dust, or one single human embrace, contains enough power and energy to destroy all the fears in a billion universes, a billion times over, without even the tiniest depletion. 20 years. So you see, sweet and precious fear, I will not let you go. For letting go of one single thing that I love would be letting go of everything. I have no choice but to hold on to you. Such choiceless will can never be defeated. Every defeat itself, but the highest victory. Don't you see, fear, how helpless and powerless you are? You struggle for an impossibility, for an unachievable victory, but don't take my word for it. Just continue in your struggle. Hold high your swords and your shields and your weapons of mass destruction. Continue to fight your endless battle, for even as dust and ashes, my wishes for you remain the same. That one day you come to know unconditional love and happiness, that indeed you are and always have been total and complete, unconditionality, boundless to the point of indescribability, permanent, everlasting love, peace, and happiness, the sweetest of secrets, a profound surrendering, a joyful and abundant letting go.
Yeah, that the metaphor of the stream gets used in two ways, right? There's being in the stream with the flow of the whole, what you were describing. So that you're just being carried, you're going with the flow. In Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhism, the first stage of enlightenment is you're a stream enterer. And so there's kind of that metaphor of you've entered the stream, and then second is you're a non-returner. You don't jump back out of the stream, you just you stay in it, right? I think that's a wonderful. I know you're a once returner and then you're a non-returner. And the other metaphor that I was using earlier is more the society stream, and that's the stream of societal programming, and that's what we're swimming against in doing this practice. So just to clarify the different kinds of usages of that metaphor, but I love the metaphor of going with the flow of life. We'll do that meditation next week, which is called Going with the Flow, and it's about how we can let go into life. Yeah.
A quick question following up on what you're saying. If we are going with the flow of life, how is it possible to care about where we are? And if we let go of our attachments and we recognize that nothing externally is going to bring us happiness, then how do we even have preference in making a decision? I just see a potential paradox.
It could be our next talk. Was it the third Zen patriarch that said, the way is not difficult. It's often translated as the way is not difficult for one without preferences. But I think what the actual translation is, the way is not difficult for one who's not attached to preferences. Because if I asked each of you what your favorite ice cream was, you'd all give me an answer. If I came with a different flavor, would you freak out on me? Probably not. I had a teacher that actually did this. We'd gone for days and days of retreat with no dessert. He said, "What's your favorite ice cream?" And he writes them all down. This is Matthew Clixton. He writes them all down, and then he comes back with vanilla and strawberry. Nobody said vanilla and strawberry. But he was just seeing if we had an attachment. Then the teaching was attachment to preferences. So he said, "Oh, it's great you have everybody has a preference for different ice creams. It's great." Well, the little store in Ruckersville, Virginia had none of those. They had strawberry and vanilla. That's one of the most valuable teachings. But so we could explore that. That's because it's a paradox in a way. It is a paradox, not just in a way, but it's but we live this paradox as manifestations in the world. So it's important to understand how that gets lived out in the world. That we can let go of our attachment to things and preferences and desires. But they still arise, still have preferences, still have desires. It's the attachments, the important part of the variable that we have to really look at.
I had another poem that would apply exactly to this thing, but in a poetic way, which is strange. Very odd, but because I wrote two poems yesterday. Now the first one was this one. The second one was this one.
Do you want to save that for next week?
Sure. Let's see. Next week.
Because we're out of time, and I try to keep to the schedule. But yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and good to see you all here live, and good to see everybody on Zoom. And have a good week, everybody. And see you. I'm actually away next week, but Jason will be here guiding you.
Thank you.
Zoom and live.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Have a good week, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.